I'm going to shut off my video because, I am in a place where the connection isn't the best. So my voice may come across as choppy. So I'm going to turn off the video, but just want to say hi to everyone before I turn off the video. And it's good to virtually see you. Oh, that's my picture there. So turning off my video now. And so very, very strong and very warm welcome to everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar. It's our first webinar series in partnership with WEtech Alliance, WETC, InspireHUB, and AlphaKOR. So thank you for joining us. And before I go any further, I'm just going to wish you, your family, your employees, everyone that you are in touch with, the very best. I hope you and your family is keeping well and healthy. And I hope all of us are taking good care of ourselves, but also being very responsible, ensuring that we are maintaining social distance, doing our part to help all the efforts that are out to really contain this virus and to flatten the curve. So we do need to put in our best effort. So please do your part. Also communicate this to your friends, your families, whoever you can, because we have to put a collective effort if we want to win over this situation. And it is a very unprecedented time for everyone. We completely get that. Whether you are an employee or whether you're a business owner, it has impacted everyone. There is no one that this has not touched or it is not impacting. There are several businesses that have closed down completely. There are thousands of employees that are without jobs, and there are many without EI coverage and benefits. We recognize that this is a very severe situation, and the toll on businesses and the individuals is mounting by the day. And it is a very challenging phase. And I say it's a phase because I'm very optimistic that this shall pass, and it shall pass soon. We are all in it together, and we'll get through this. Believe me, this is something which in few weeks from now, we will look back and we'll be able to smile on all the efforts that we put together collectively and all the things that we did to get through this phase, and we will get through this phase. And I also want to assure everyone that we are doing everything within our means. We are putting our best effort to help you, to provide you the support that you so very much need. The Chamber, along with our partners, WETC, WEtech, and all the other agencies, we are coordinating our efforts to support our businesses, and we're bringing relevant information to you. We've been speaking with all three levels of government to advocate on your behalf and highlight your needs and your concerns. So, if you have a question, if you have an information that you seek, or if you have a suggestion, please feel free to reach us, on our social media accounts, or there is an email, info@Windsor-Essex chamber.org. So you can send us your suggestions, concerns, feedback, whatever that you want us to help you out with. I'm also going to give you my cell phone number. I'm available 24/7 in case you need to reach out to me. So my cell number is 519-890-8922. I repeat, 519-890-8922. So this is a time for us to be very coordinated and work very efficiently. And many of us have started to work remotely or are considering working remotely. So where possible, we strongly encourage you to do so because, this helps in social distancing. And as you know, this is very, very important for us to do that. And so in order to really help us get set up for working remotely, we decided to offer this webinar in partnership with the agencies that I mentioned. And actually, I have to commend and thank AlphaKOR, WEtech Alliance, and InspireHUB for initiating this because this is something which is, I think, very important at this time. And I really thank them for bringing this to attention, for suggesting that we offer this to our members and to the business community at large. So thank you for doing that. So today we are very fortunate that we have two distinguished speakers that are experts in this topic of working remotely. And they have built their own very successful companies by leveraging technology and by embracing virtual offices. So they will be sharing their experience and tips with us. This I'm hoping is going to help you, because it's not just about what infrastructure you need, but there is more to it. The chamber has now, it has been working in a virtual way since almost a week plus now. All my colleagues, the staff, we are having virtual meetings, and it's working out really well for us. But as we go forward, there is more to it than just using technology. And those tips and those, expert advice is something that you will get from our distinguished panelists today. So the first one that I will be bringing in, that I have the pleasure to introduce, is Karolyn Hart, a great friend of mine whom I've known for several years, and a very, very strong Windsor-Essex supporter, and many of you know her. She's the president and the founder of InspireHUB, and InspireHUB has developed an award-winning app called iHub. It's a platform through which you can build apps, you can build portals, hubs, intranets, extranets. It's a great platform, and it has been extremely successful, not just in Windsor-Essex, in Canada, but also outside of Canada. She's done very well, and she has got her office, which is working remotely right from the time they got started. So she has a lot of experience in terms of what makes it work and how to be successful at doing it. So with that, I'm very pleased and happy to invite Karolyn Hart to take this further. Karolyn.
Well, thank you very much, Rakesh. And, I certainly do love our community, and the fact that, for those who are listening, it took one group text message, and we were in a meeting that day, and 45 minutes later, we had put this entire thing together. And that is certainly just tells you the passion that is of everybody within our community to succeed. And I had written an article on March 3rd. Our team had published it, called Suddenly Remote. We had seen some of the things that were happening. We had no idea, of course, when we published that on March 3rd, where we would all be sitting today in quarantine with self-isolation. And it got a lot of attention. And I realized that myself having worked remote for 7 years with InspireHUB, and actually the first time I ever worked remote was in 2004. So I realized I was sitting on a lot of great lessons that I immediately wanted to get out into our business community. And so I'm going to talk about that experience, but there was only one other person I knew right away that I needed, because I'm going to talk to you about a lot of the soft things about workforce and operations. Very, very important so that you can have thriving teams. But then there's going to be a practical implementation. And Frank was one of the first people I met back in 2004. So I'm starting to show my age. How is that possible? That's 16 years ago. And truly, nobody I would trust more in this community. Yeah, I mean, 6 days ago. That's what I meant. I can't be 16. And nobody I trust more to help with the actual practical implementation. Because while my company has built a software platform that helps connect communities and audiences, and it's everything that Rakesh said, when it comes to, and my entire company is in the cloud, when it comes to some of the other practical implementations, that's where Frank is going to come in. So with that, I'm going to talk about how do we get your company thriving now that you're working remotely. And then we're also going to make sure that we distribute that article that our team published on March 3rd. So let's get started. So 3 things that you need to understand right now. There is a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of fear. I have people calling me, and I of course, first of all, my company was by choice to go remote. It's a little bit different when it's forced upon you, and I think we need to acknowledge that. But also, what does this all mean? This is brand new for companies and people all over the world, right? So let's talk about some 3 foundational elements that we need to know as we move forward. And first, the first one is this: the world just got more digital overnight, not less, and that has impacts to your company. So we are now sitting in a virtual world. I've been sitting in it for 7 years. I can tell you, because of the knowledge work I do, that it is extremely productive. And the second point that you need to know is that remote work might be new for you, but it's been a growing success thing that's been happening for years. As I mentioned, the first time I ever worked remote was back in 2004 with the dial-up that, made sounds still back then. Today we sit in this world where it is literally, there is virtually no difference for me in running my business, except when I'm with people in person. True story, we're actually a little less efficient and less effective than when we are virtually, because we can share so many tools. And the other thing that you need to know, just foundationally, is this, that 100% of companies all have knowledge work that is able to be done remotely. So certainly not all companies are all knowledge work. So, things like lawyers, for example, they can definitely work remotely 100% of the time. I'm in software, so that can be done 100% of the time. But even businesses such as restaurants or wineries or any of those type of things where you have the physicality of actually having a product to move, you still have important knowledge work that needs to be done that can easily be done remotely. And nothing is more important right now than your marketing. That's a big piece of knowledge work that does go virtual, and you need to be leaning into that at this time, not obviously shrinking away. So we're going to talk about some of that today and what that looks like. And now we're going to talk about some overall virtual etiquette as I get into today's webinar, and also things that will really help your organization. Now, I do see a warning that my internet is currently unstable. So I'm just going to say, Sue Braden, if I go off for any reason, which this does happen in the remote world, if you would please text me, and then make sure, Audrey, if you could get that phone number into my text messaging right now, so I will call if anything goes down.
Will do.
Thank you. So we queued that real world experience up for all of you so that you would know that this is totally normal in remote world. Let's talk about some virtual etiquette, 3 rules to live by, that we when I first started talking about this, people laughed, and now there's not a lot of laughter. So number 1, as you are going about your virtual workday, please wear pants. Yes, that sounds funny, but it's not. Getting dressed in the morning, it will not only help you create a distinction between your work and your downtime, but as we have learned the hard way, and I will not embarrass anyone on my team, but to say this, emergencies will happen. And while you may look professional from the waist up, if a child wanders in and dumps something hot in your lap, or a dog suddenly distracts you and you jump up in front of the camera, you do not want to find yourself embarrassed. So it does something also, I find, that when you do get up and get dressed, it gets you into a workplace, because your home is usually your down place, not your workplace, but now it's both. So that will certainly help. Now, a couple of years ago, I implemented a rule, a hard and fast rule that my whole team has mocked me on, which was no phones in the bathroom ever. No, really, no phones in the bathroom. And then in the last 2 days, because people thought I was being a little over the top, I said, look, there's certain places in your home that are sacred. There's no need to have a telephone in there. And I just remember thinking there's so many horrifying things that could go wrong. I mean, it takes butt dial to a whole new level, right? Like, let's be honest. And then in the last 2 days, that actually happened. And right now going viral around the world is a video called Poor Jennifer. And it's horrifying, because somebody was on a video chat just like this. They were walking down a hall and they actually went into the washroom. That's a real world mortifying experience globally. Millions of people, I think over 10 million people have now watched that horrifying video. So let's have some little bit of laughter and levity. Let's not have a Poor Jennifer moment. Please leave your phones in your bathroom. And the final rule that we have for virtual etiquette, and you're going to hear me repeating this, is to be on camera and to sit still as much as possible. So that means don't be walking, don't be driving on your conference calls when you're doing business. Be sitting facing the camera. Don't have your camera over here and then be talking to people in the meeting the whole time like this. that is really one of the things that makes people feel like you're not that interested. One of the feedback that we had is very early on in InspireHUB, we felt very comfortable in conference calls. So I actually took one while I was driving, and I got some pretty negative feedback from a prospective client on that because they found it distracting, and they also felt like I wasn't fully invested. So some really simple virtual etiquette. It seems obvious and common sense, but it's a whole new world. So if that's the first time, yeah, thank Frank. Frank just adjusted his camera, so now he's even more square. Thank you. That was great. All right, right along. Virtual of engagement. So all of us grew up in our careers going into offices, checking in, saying good morning, getting our coffees. And one of the interesting things is that whether you realized it or not, your physical office has some rules of engagement that you will have learned just by participating in it. And now that you actually have a remote company, it's important that your team sits down and says, what are our virtual rules of engagement going to be? And so at InspireHUB, we actually bring in new employees and we put them through orientation and we teach them. We have a whole thing that we put together that teaches them the virtual rules of engagement and how do you work in a remote environment. So some of the ones that we actually did establish is that we have core business hours. When you're working from home, it's really the problem for my team ended up not being not working. It was working too long, all the time connected. Your establishing of the core business hours is one of the most important things that you will do because it will set the expectation to your team that there is a beginning and thank God there is an end in sight at the end of the day. And they need to know, because we have usually come into this place when it comes to remote work, that if we're working virtually, we're all connected. For a lot of people who worked from home, they also often felt like, I don't want people to think I'm not working, so I'm going to be connected at 11 o'clock at night. If you want to burn out your teams, don't establish core business hours. We found that establishing our core business hours did a few things. We do a daily stand-up meeting every single morning at the same time, which allows all of us to be on camera, grab a coffee, say good morning, and we try to recreate those things that we know work in physical offices in the virtual environment. It also gives us a moment of connection, because if you think about your virtual day, you're coming in, you're like, hey, Stan, good morning, whoever, right? What you got on today? There's all these pieces of information that you're queuing up for your day that are really important to success. And so every one of our teams at InspireHUB, my senior team to all of my marketing team, my dev team, all of us have stand-ups in the morning. And so I have my senior stand-up rolls down into our team stand-ups with their team leaders. Everybody has a moment of connection. The other thing it does is if there's certain things that are coming out through the day to be more productive, you always know that you have the stand-up the next morning where you can raise it. So it helps reduce the levels of meetings going on because you're going to always have those. One of the things that we also created for virtual rules of engagement was the ability to close your virtual office door. In the physical office, if you need to get some work done, you'll shut that door and people know don't bother that person. They're obviously working on something that requires a lot of focus. One of the things that we didn't do at the very beginning, we actually jokingly say that we were un-InspireHUB at the beginning of InspireHUB. I've talked about this, how we thought that years ago, 7 years ago, there was this idea that if you were a virtual company, somehow you were more virtuous. It ends up that if it doesn't work in the physical world, it's going to not work in the virtual world. And you can have a thriving culture and you can have an uninspired culture. And it really comes down to making sure that you're having these clear lines of communications. So the ability to close your virtual office door on your teams is critical. What we do at InspireHUB is we call it going dark. So it literally is, we come into our chats and the things that we have, and it'll say, hey guys, I'm going dark for an hour or 2 hours. Is there anything you need before I go dark? And what going dark means is I am shutting down all my notifications. Everything's going dark. Right now, I am dark to my rest of my company because I'm in this webinar, for example. They also know that if they need me during going dark, that the way to do that is to call my home line or to text my phone. Those are the only two, because you still have to have the ability to knock on the door if there's an emergency. So that's how we recreated that. And the final thing, and this is really, really important, is acknowledging that when you are sick and you work from home, what are you going to do about that when you're always working from home, right? So at the days when you're not feeling so great and you would be like, well, I can still get some work done, but I don't have the same energy level that I normal. I'm going to work from home. And you would usually maybe trade off your day with some less work, like maybe some research or things that you just need housekeeping, administrative, whatever that is. We still allow people to work from home when they're feeling sick. And what that basically means is that they're not going to be on camera during our meetings, because we do set that up and we understand they're feeling miserable. And that's a permission. Hey, I'm working from home today. And the other more important part is when somebody is really sick, they need to know from their leadership, they really need to know this, that they can take the day off work. Okay? Because what ended up happening at InspireHUB in our first couple of years is nobody took sick days ever. And I know what you're thinking from a leadership standpoint. You're like, that's amazing. It's not amazing, because when people, I teach this at our company. First of all, every adult is a 2-year-old without sleep. And I think you're about 1 year old with how you're feeling when you're sick. You're going to make more mistakes. The very best thing my company, that our team does for each other when they're sick, is to actually log off, go get sleep, and get rested so you can come back to work. And establishing those clear lines is really important with your rules of engagement. One of the things I say to teams is that fences make great neighbors. So the clearer your fences are when it comes to establishing core business hours, closing virtual office doors, and allowing people to work from home when they're sick or not, whatever that looks like, the healthier your relationships are going to be. Where it really gets confusing is when people aren't really sure what the rules of engagement are, because they are working from their home office. And the other thing is, this is great because we're all in quarantine. So, there wasn't a lot of passion for if my dogs would be barking or there was noise in the background previously. Fortunately, everything's closed and we're quarantined. So one of the things that you can really help your teams is by saying, hey, it's okay if you hear the kids in the background right now. It's okay if the dogs start barking. Make a game of it. I don't know, put something in a quarter into a jar every time there's a dog bark. Make something fun, but really make sure that your team understands that there's going to be these rules of engagement. We're going to be okay with that. All right. Rules for online meetings. Now, I've talked about some of that, but this is really important because I've touched on it. Prepare to arrive on time. You need to show up early. You need to make sure that if the meeting's at 10 a.m., it starts at 10 a.m. and you begin. You'd be surprised how many people, especially when we were first starting, kind of treated like remote meetings kind of casually, like it's okay if I'm a few minutes late because my technology wasn't working. It does happen. Sometimes the camera breaks, my internet has gone down. I've had those things happen, but it's really important that everybody understands, as part of your discussion with the rules of engagement, meetings still need to start on time. So don't, I know we had some technical issues at the beginning. It happens. Glad that we could be that real for you, but just try to always make sure they do. If possible, be on camera. There are a lot of people who equate being in a virtual meeting and on camera with like being on television and they feel nervous. No, that's not the reality. Being able to see your teammates is a massive difference maker. It really makes a difference. Now, sometimes you can't do that because of internet bandwidth, which Frank is going to talk about, and different things. But whenever possible, make sure you're on camera and facing. Give your full attention. Just recently on InspireHUB, we had to do a little refresher on this because it's really tempting, right? You're in a call, you're having a meeting, somebody references something, you're like, is that true? You just go over to that screen, do a little Google search, validate that. Next thing you know, there's an email. Next thing you know, you're like, someone's calling your name and you've been busted because you weren't paying attention. Happens constantly. So sleeping, whatever you're doing, right, Frank? One of the best things that we do, we do a refresher about why do we give our full attention in our meetings to the person talking, because that way we don't have to repeat ourselves. That way we have everything in front of us, and also sends the message that what they are saying is important. We also practice rules about meetings at our company. It can be done in an email. Why am I having a meeting about it? Same rules apply in the virtual world. So the other thing you should know is you think that people aren't noticing that you're working on stuff because your face is, I tell you right now, I can always call out my team members. In fact, I can see when two of my team members are cracking jokes, and I'll be like, is there anything to share with the class? And they always laugh about, and I've been busted myself by my own team because I just was like, it's just one thing and it seems so important. And they're like, are you paying attention? And I'm like, yes, no. Okay. So full attention is important. Also, teach your attendees at meetings, talk about it. How can they interrupt you? Right now I'm doing a webinar, so I have the floor. That's great. But in a collaborative session, people feel uncomfortable at first in the virtual world of talking over each other, which is something, interruptions, talking layering passion and brainstorming on each other in a boardroom happens naturally. So in the virtual world, talk about that with your team. How do we want to do it? Now, one of the benefits of virtual world that I really do like is those of my team that are shy and introverted actually are more likely to engage because they will type their question in a chat window that somebody else will read as opposed to just sitting quietly. So having those moments of dialogue where you can actually bring that together is really important. And finally, whenever possible, try for a quiet space. I've talked about the kids, the dogs. I live in Lakeshore. A train goes by regularly. The team knows what time the trains go by at. But whenever possible, shut your door. And there is some tech that's available. I'm using something called Crisp that helps drown out any background noise that is coming on. It's a free tool. You can crisp.ai if you want to try it for yourselves during webinars, but really try to have those when it comes to online meetings. All right. So coming into my last two slides. So Frank, get ready. It's going to be your turn. I want to talk about health and wellness. In our remote work, again, it was our option and our choice. One of the things that was really difficult was isolation. You're working from your home all the time. It can actually, one of my team said they once didn't leave their house for 24 days because they didn't need to. Now that's really the extreme, not something healthy. And of course, we've all been forced right now into this time of quarantine. So again, when you have the option and then it's taken away from you, very different. But I'm going to give you some tools on how you can actually reduce the isolation. Now, outside of this, after we get through this quarantine time, one of the things that we do is, for example, the reason why we keep core business hours is that we really encouraged our team when they could, to make sure they went out of the house and went and did something with other people. I'm not advocating that right now during quarantine, but it's one of those things to be aware of, that you might get addicted to being productive working remotely, and you might want to do this in the future. So be aware that after you get out of this, you can still find yourselves in isolation. I went to my team and I asked them, so what are some things that I should share in light of the quarantine for leaders and remote teams to do to help with the health and wellness piece of working remotely? One was ask people how they are doing regularly and really check in with them intentionally. Get online and say to them, on my team, I have said to my team, if I hear you say the word fine, that's the 4-letter F word that tells me you're not fine and we need to have a conversation. And everybody laughs because they won't automatically do it. Sometimes they're like, no, I'm really okay. I really am. But other times that will trigger me to be like, hang out, let's have a chat. Because sometimes you don't have those visual cues that you have in the physical environment. So you need to be very intentional in building those healthy relationships with your team. Setting the regular business hours, encouraging the staff, it helps. That was, I think, an interesting theme. I've already talked about why that's important, but I think it came up again. This is a good one. Creating a separate place for your work and a separate place for everything else in your personal life in your house. Even if it's just that you are going to take a corner of your kitchen table, and that will be the place that you always do your work from. The reason is if you get up in the morning and you have your start time and you work from that spot, and then it's time to actually shut things down, you need to know that you have certain places in your home that your mind's like, oh, this is my rest area. And it really does make a huge difference. I can count on one hand in 7 years how many times I've sat in my TV living area with my laptop. I just don't do it. That is my place of refuge. You have to create that clear line for your mental health. And my team will all tell you that at first it sounds a little weird, but then you really start to understand having that division makes a difference. And finally, keep a schedule. And we talk about this at InspireHUB. Get rest and drink water. You're like, what are you talking about? I'm working from home. This can be no problem. Interesting thing that happens, and remote workers know this, is because you put in so much time, because everything seems so convenient, because you don't feel like you're at work in the traditional sense, you're actually more inclined to not drink enough water and to not get enough rest, because you can just, oh, it's 9 o'clock and I have this thing, I'm just going to go quickly check. And you can also just find yourself in this place where you think you're going to do better than you are. So having those things in place, and whether I actually have a couple of teammates who set alarms for themselves to ensure they're getting up, they're taking their breaks, they're going for walks, they're doing those things. So one last little fun thing, building virtually. How do you do it? Actually, on the line with us is Audrey Duncan. She's calling in today from Kansas City. She does a lot of things, special projects, and she is also mandatory fund officer at InspireHUB. But she's come up with a number of things to help us, and so has Sue Braden, who's on. They've done a number of things that have really done help our team do some team building. Jackbox Games, Google it. They have a number of games that you can play virtually with teams through Google Hangouts and sharing screens that are very, very fun. That can help. They've also done virtual meals and lunch and learns, and even virtual scavenger hunts. And if you want any of that, I'll make sure that we include that in the article that we distribute. At this point in the webinar, that concludes my part of the workforce, the operations, how do you keep your employees connected. I'm going to turn it over to Frank. And as you've heard, my whole team, this is what we do for a lot of companies around the world. Love to be able to help you if you need that. But all of the other stuff is Frank and his team. So I'm going to turn it over to Frank now. Thanks, Frank.
Hey, thanks, Karolyn. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Let me set up my screen here. So, Karolyn, for me, I usually do face-to-face, unplugged, and like to be in front of an audience. So this is all new to me. So thanks for teaching me a bunch of new things today. I really enjoyed it. I really want to thank the Chamber, you, of course, Karolyn, InspireHUB, Development Corporation, WERCC, you're awesome, Yvonne, WEtech, and all of you on the call today. I really do appreciate it. Suddenly remote. Well, we've been helping companies for many years do this, but not reactionary. We get up in the morning and the world has changed. So I just want to share with you at AlphaKOR that we really do care about our loved ones, our team. We have about 3/4 of them working remotely as we speak. I'm in the office, so I'm quarantined in my own office. And after this presentation, I want everyone to be wowed. I was wowed by Karolyn, to be honest with you, so I'm moving my hands. You can't see them, so I'm fortunate. So thanks for those tips. So you want to work from home. So some tools we're going to talk about briefly are the internet itself, your devices, your applications, your data and your backups, and security. All really hot topics. We're getting bombarded by many different clients and prospects today looking for all the answers here. So we'll do my best to go through it one at a time. So the first question we get when working from home is your internet. My favorite question is it ever fast enough? And no, it's not. We've experienced it today. The connections at our different homes, at our different offices, some are faster, some are slower, some have some choppiness to them. So it's not always your equipment. We have to look at all the variables along the way. So with the internet, you can run speed tests. You can Google speed tests. You can go to speedtest.org.com, whichever test you like, and you can actually test what speed you're running up and down. Don't get too caught up on the numbers. Just treat them as miles per hour. And call your internet service provider. There's a lot of different options out there. And ask them to find out what options you have. If you feel your internet's too slow, can they update your device that they put in your home? Can they provide a faster service at slightly higher cost? So these are a couple of things that your tech team at your office, your tech company can help you with. Be happy to answer any questions you might have on speed and what speed should I be looking for working from home. Firewall. Firewall is, actually, before I get into firewall, I want to talk about a lot of homes in Windsor-Essex County now have dedicated fiber. You know, and you've seen the trades dig up your street the last couple years. So if you do have dedicated fiber and you have not moved to it, I would highly recommend to inquire for dedicated fiber. You'll find you'll have your own pipe coming to your home as opposed to sharing the entire pipe with the whole neighborhood. And with everyone being home today, there's more devices in the neighborhood than there ever were. So I would suggest dedicated fiber might be a similar price range, not a lot more than what you're currently paying. With your internet, there's other things. Are you plugging into your internet connection, or like most of us, are you wireless? So we'll talk a little bit about wireless connections. You have a password on the wireless, or if I show up in your neighbor's house in your driveway, can I just hop on your internet and hog your bandwidth to do this webinar? So when you go to run your Netflix, it's going to not be able to stream very quickly and get choppy. So we get those calls where, you know, people are at home, more TVs are on, more streaming, right? So take a look at how are you connected. So make sure password, I can't stress enough. You need to change your password today. Everyone needs to change it, and I'm going to say it several times. Everyone change all your passwords today and change them on a regular basis. Firewall, yes, you need a firewall. What's a firewall? So picture your home and you have a front door and you got a lock on it. You got a deadbolt. You might be one of the large cities where you have the whole big steel bar. So what level of firewall do you need? It all comes down to what are you doing at home? What are you accessing? Am I the accountant and I'm remoting into my company and I'm getting into my financial statements? Am I getting my customer database? Am I doing quotes? So it depends on the sensitivity of the data. How secure do you want it? But we do need a firewall. We need passwords, as I mentioned, and make sure that we have some sort of antivirus, anti-spam, malware. The standard tools are all going to help building a good firewall. Now, people ask, well, I have a firewall and I got hacked. Someone got through. Yeah, possible. So back to that front door, if I give the key to all my friends and they all have a key to my door and they unlock it, because I gave it to them, I have a great bolt, but if I give them the keys to open it, and that's what's happening with hackers today, we're letting them into our environment. So you need to be careful. We're going to talk about phishing schemes, and we'll get into that a little bit later about what phishing means as opposed to, you know, just trusting everyone blindly. So working from home, your business and home, there's a lot of different rules of engagement to consider. What is your work from home policy that your company has? Does your company even have one? Should I keep regular hours, as Karolyn mentioned, or I'm going to work from 2 a.m. to noon instead? So you have to kind of look at how do you want to set up your office, and is it going to be separate? I think it should be separate from the rest of the house. And think about your family, your pets. I know today when I'm in my home office tonight, if I'm working on something, for example, last night, last minute getting ready for this, I closed my office door and the family knows not to interrupt me for about an hour. So you want to separate it. You might also look at when you're calling the internet company, does it make sense to purchase a separate internet line just for the business? Will your company have a work from home policy where they might help with some of the costs that you incur? Can you take a look at that as an option? So something to consider when you're calling the internet company. There's a lot of different things that you can go over. Some occupations, you can write off some expenses. Talk to your accountant. They'll advise you if that makes sense, if you can do that or not. At our home, there's 4 of us. I've got 2 daughters and, of course, the lovely Carmela. So we have 4 cell phones whenever we're home. So last night we're home, so there's 4 cell phones on. There's at least 2 tablets, and there's streaming video all time. So that anytime there's 6 to 8 devices at any given time. So if I was to work full-time from home, the neighborhood I moved in a year and a half ago does not have dedicated fiber. It was almost a showstopper when we moved. It was something where I had a debate with Carmela. It was one of those things that we had to give up until dedicated fiber came. So it's a big adjustment for me personally to move from a dedicated fiber, of course, AlphaKOR, we got a huge pipe here, to move to a neighborhood with shared internet. So we've learned to make do with it. But again, we're streaming music, we're streaming videos, we're working from home. Carmela's home full-time working. My daughter is at St. Clair, everything's online today. So now we have 6 to 8 devices at any given time. So I have to learn to be a little more patient at home. So that's my little business and home, where we're looking at, I'm probably going to get a separate internet connection just if this continues for a little bit longer, and take a look at those options. Our devices. There's a lot of great phone systems that companies have, and if you have a phone system, voice over IP, a VoIP phone system, that anything you purchased in recent years, did you know you can actually take that phone home? Now here's the downside, where we don't have a lot of plugins anymore, right? Because we're wireless internet. But if you had a jack, or if you had a switch that would have all your ports in it that you could access from your office with a cord, plug in your phone, and it's actually an extension. So when you call AlphaKOR on our main number, if I was working from home today, you hit my extension 228, and it would be bringing out my desk at home. Very convenient. Can be set up very simply by your your telephone company, your tech support people that you have available. Your cell phones. So is it a company cell phone? Is it a personal cell phone? Again, what's the work at home policy when it comes to your devices? Can my personal phone be made for work calls? How about your phone number? Do I want to block it so that if I call Karolyn from my home number, I don't want her calling me back in the middle of the night? Or even if it's my company cell, do you want her to have my company cell? Today I've opened it up, obviously a lot of us have. But again, those are things to think about because your environment now has changed. I'm using different devices at home. So what are those rules of engagement and how does it affect you? So think about that. Your phone should be a piece of equipment that's really easy to use today and easy to communicate. It has a very simple means of communication. The voicemail on your phone at the office, can it go into a text? Can it go in your email? That way you don't have to dial in and check your voicemail. So those are tools that are in place today that a lot of good phone companies have already set up that can be assisted to make it easier for your voicemail and your texting. One thing that I want to talk about with everything going on is I had some great advice yesterday, reminders to clean my cell phone on a regular basis. So I've got all the wipes and cleaning the cell phones, cleaning my phone devices, cleaning my laptop when I get home, my tablet, my keyboard, my mouse. So I've added that to my housekeeping duties. So as a good practice, I highly recommend it to do it often, right? I'll be smart about it. Computers, where do we start? Laptops, notebooks, tablets, iPhones, iPads, you name it, desktop. There's so many different computer equipment. Same rules. Do I have my own personal computer at home now I'm going to use for work? Do I bring my computer, my laptop from the office home? Am I going to take over the computer at my desk from the computer I bring home or that I have at home? So computers becomes, there's the horsepower, the memory, there's a lot of variables there, but there's also, when I'm working remotely, what is it that I'm accessing? Am I going to the cloud? Am I going to the office computer? Am I going to the office network? So there's different computer power that you would want to look at that you have discussions on that would make sense for your application. And then some of us are used to using 2 or 3 monitors. So how are we going to do with that at home? Are we bringing home monitors? Are we going out and buying monitors? So again, your work from home policy, take a look at what's included, what options you have, because you want to replicate your home office as close as you can to the office. That's what I would recommend. Operating systems, I'm going to talk about the IBM world. If you're using Windows 7, Windows 8, shut down your unit and do not go on the cloud and do not go to the office computer systems. There's no security for Windows 7, Windows 8 operating system. Back to that firewall, you've now opened a gigantic door where there's no more security patches. Windows 10 in the IBM world, minimum, keep your updates, very important. Things that we're not always doing, this housekeeping piece, become very important today because there's new security patches that are always being brought out. And with the webcam, this tablet I have has a camera built in, has a mic, speakers built in, so you might take a look at your setting. As I mentioned, I'm usually in the physical world, selling great technical solutions. So I've learned a bit here today, and there's other things that I would recommend for the camera setup in terms of the environment and the speakers, for example. 2 things, as we learn as we go, and we're helping clients moving forward with the same type of conversation. There's a lot of applications out there that are available. So phone conferencing. A lot of us are used to the board table. Now we want to do a phone conference. So there's a lot of different software. Here. So your phone system, of course, a lot of them have it built into them. There's a lot of tools that you can look at. Zoom as well that we're using right here today could also be used for phone conferencing. There's WebEx. We're using Uber Conference at AlphaKOR, for example, as one of the tools. So we get asked all the time which one is the best. So we always look at your application, your budget. What is it you're trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? What's the other end look like? How many users? There's a lot of different variables. Same thing with video conferencing. There's some free trial versions, there's some free basic versions, then you scale up. The video conferencing that we're using today is Zoom, and there is a free version. If you go to zoom.us pricing, you can see there's up to 40 minutes for the free version, and it starts at $20 per Canadian per month. So it's not a huge investment if you have a small. If you're looking at a larger stuff, then you might want to look at that tool or another tool. Of course, WebEx is another one by Cisco, and Microsoft bundles with Office 365. So a lot of us are in the cloud with Office. They bundle Microsoft Teams. Join Me is one that a lot of people I know use as well that they seem to like. And same with collaboration, a lot of different collaboration tools. I've used Monday.com with our sales team. They like to use our WhatsApp to stay in touch right away and share ideas. There's GoToMeeting, Slack. Karolyn, take a look at InspireHUB. I know a lot of our clients have used the platform for team communication. Highly recommend it. You sold me on it, Karolyn. So great company backing up the product. Take a look at that. Check it out. Data and backups. Here's a really fun and exciting part that no one wants to talk about. So we always like to ask, where is your data? Oh, it's in the cloud, it's safe. I have nothing to worry about. False. Where do I save my data? Oh, I'm just saving it on my computer. I'm at home now, I'm safe. How's my data backed up? I don't know. I've got a Google Drive. I think. So these are things that we hear all day long, every single day. You need to know where your data is. So I'll go back to accounting. As a co-owner of the company, my financial data, where is it sitting? How's it backed up? How secure is it? Who has access to it? Those are all questions that every single owner, manager, and team player should be asking. Do I have access to this data? Should I have access to it? Where do I save it? I should never save anything on my local system, never on my computer. This tablet you can run in my office, grab it, as long as I log out, which is a good habit every time you walk away from it. You have access to nothing. There is nothing on this system at all. You need to know all my credentials. You need to know my two-factor authentication, where it protects my cell phones. I have to enter a code, for example, so you can't get anything out of this computer except you can reformat it and use it as a tablet. But the data is all secured and locked down. So how extreme do you need to go? Again, what are you doing from home? How sensitive is it? What happens if you lose it? So in the cloud, talk to your cloud provider. Talk to your tech team at work. Talk to your tech company. Talk to them. How is the cloud data backed up? Newsflash, not many cloud systems out of the box, basic flavor per month include backup. What happens, and it's going to happen, when the hackers are hitting the data centers and they're hacking them, or they're hacking your application? What happens to my data? So we need to think about that. Saving it. I'm saving it on the company network. Is it being backed up to the company backup? And then it's backed up in the file server, and then is it offsite backup? So have those discussions again. I know it's not a very exciting topic, but very critical in the event something were to happen. I'm sure there'll be some questions on that. Cybersecurity, my favorite subject of the day. It's unfortunate when all these hacking become prevalent today and they're ongoing. It's really changed the way we have done business in recent years. Our business strategy conversations have changed, putting things in place where the IT security is a business conversation and an extremely important one. The number one is, am I safe? So again, we care about everyone. We want everyone to be safe, healthy, and smart. But now, is my data safe? Is my company safe? So again, we've talked a little bit about that. There's options. We can have a sidebar conversation on cyber security. If your company does not have cybersecurity, highly recommend starting that dialogue. Highly recommend reviewing your policies. Unfortunately, even locally, we've been helping a lot of different companies that have been hit with ransomware, and it's not fun at all. It's a long, painful process, whether you want to decide to pay it or not pay it. Phishing schemes. Read your emails carefully. I am not going to send an email asking you to run out and buy me a gift card for 100 of my clients at $100 each. And I know you're probably laughing, but this happens. And it's happened too often, especially during the holiday season. I'm not going to send you a PDF and say, there's your appeal, click on this. I'm not going to send you an order, click on this attachment to verify your order, here are the details. So we need to slow down. One thing we're learning, we're working from home, is we're actually in a different environment. So our guard is not down as much as it normally would be. So I'm hoping everyone's reading things a little more carefully. And with the virus, there are so many bogus websites that have been set up. So please, before you send money, before you click on things, ask some questions. Be alert. Can't stress this enough. And I know it sounds like common sense, but we're helping people every day deal with this and deal with sending money offshore to Hotmail accounts that cannot be traced. And with ransomware, locking down locking down a company for several days, lost production, and all the headache that goes with it. Trust me, you don't want to deal with it. So let's be alert, because the majority of it is we're letting them in through the firewall. We're running, giving them the keys, or opening the door. In your inbox, check the email. So if it says John Smith, don't assume John Smith, good friend of yours, a client, don't assume who it is. Read the email. If you really look at it, right click on it, you'll see this John Smith, his email is scamming@hotmail.com. I sent something very obvious, but you get the picture. Read it. Because if this is John Smith at abc.corp, obviously this is not his email. So call him, or start a new clean email that you normally email John Smith and say, hey, by the way, did you send me this email asking me to donate to your cause? Because this is happening today. Thank you, everyone. I really do appreciate it. Let's be safe and healthy out there. And getting used to not being unplugged, but still being personal. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank, and thanks, Karolyn. I think that was very useful. I learned a lot through that. So, and I've got my colleagues, my staff that has called in as well. So this is going to be very useful. Starting tomorrow, we're going to start implementing a lot of things that I learned here. So thank you for sharing. There have been some questions that have come from the attendees. So I will go check that now and see which are the ones that have come in from our attendees. So let me.
So Rakesh, our team has queued these up for you, and we'll share the first question with you and your panelist from Parker Bowman. He asked, how do you recommend creating a separate space for work and everything else when some people are living in a small single-bedroom condo?
I'll take that. I have staff who are literally working in single bachelor pads and very small spaces all over the world. And two things, it really comes down to just coordinating off, like literally a corner. TV trays, I know they're like old and like grandma and grandpa use them like back in the day, but it can be you can actually angle them pretty flexible if you don't have a desk. Biggest thing is, one of the things, I have one of my employees works in Newcastle, England in a flat. And what she has done is simply take her desk and move it up against the wall and just use that tiny little piece of her flat to be her corner. And we actually at InspireHUB, everybody took pictures of their setups and their office and their desks, and we shared them with each other to give each other tips on how to do this, because not everybody has the same type of setup. I think the biggest part is just having that regular spot, wherever that is, within your flat, your apartment, your room. I have one employee who just, they work out of their room. That's where they work. And they're in a shared house with a bunch of people. So it is very effective. Does that answer your question?
So the next question is from Lillian to Frank. Most of the time, the internet will state it depends on how many users are online. That changing your speed won't necessarily speed up your internet. Frank.
Okay, thanks for the question. So it depends on the, so you're talking about in a home with a number of users. So there are different appliances, if you will. There are internet products where it'll stream better. It'll how can I describe it? It'll take the data and shrink it so it moves it faster. If you want to email me direct, frank@alphakor.com, I'd be happy to have a further discussion on it because there are some options available for that. Good question. Thank you.
If I could add, as a mom, I had a teenager at home, and so I literally set her up with her own account. And when she was getting crazy and I was in the middle of a meeting that was impacting because in the summer she was home, I would literally shut down her account. And then I would also tell her that she could have it back when she finished her chores. Little parenting tip. It works. It's awesome. You like that, Frank?
So we have another question from someone who's just listed as anonymous. I've issued company laptops to employees to work with at home. It leaves some questions as to how work-related busy they are. Do you have a suggestion to sample how hard they are working? Screenshots, keystrokes, etc. What's legal and what product? Panelists.
Okay, so this is always a concern. I read an article where the big thing today is trust. So if there's a question of trust, that's a different conversation. There's monitoring tools. There's a product by Veriato, Veriato, that companies will engage and install. Check with your HR, just an HR consultant and legal consulting on what's the memo, company memo. Dear employees, we are monitoring everything at the company, including phone calls and internet usage, computer usage of all company products. So there are some tools, and we have helped a lot of companies with that. The tool will do random screenshots. You can drill down as deep as you want. People don't necessarily know that they're being watched. And here's the beauty of it. When I'm in the chat rooms, it will record all keyboard strokes. So when I delete my history, you can still get it. Rule of thumb, anything you do has been recorded on the internet, and there might be a way to get it. So I hope that answers your question. If not, again, I'd be more than happy to drill down deep on that conversation with you.
Yeah, so from an operational standpoint and from a technical standpoint, I participated in companies where I was working for a healthcare company on technical things. So every one of our keystrokes was mandated by compliance to be tracked, because we were actually doing, this is again years ago, probably 2002. We were doing digital imagery for scans, right? So if we had to be, we were audited every quarter. Every keystroke legally had to be tracked. That aside, if you're not in a healthcare, if you're not in that kind of business or environment where you have that level of compliance and auditing, for example, in my company, I don't have a legal requirement that I have to do that. The very best thing I have found is actually just proper project management, not monitoring and caring about, if I'm not paying for the internet, I'm not paying for the internet. What do I care if my team is using the laptop to binge watch, whatever it is? I don't know, Love is Blind. That was a big thing last week. So, I don't care. What I care about as a leader is that my team is producing and getting the work done. And that just comes down to simple project management. For that project management, we use teamwork.com. We assign our tasks, our time, we do our time and billing. So when I can go in, more importantly, if my team schedules out their tasks and they say it's going to take this much time and they're going to have it done by Friday, and I go into Teamwork and the task is not done and they haven't logged their time, then I can have meaningful project conversations about, well, what happened? Well, sometimes it's not because they're binge watching. I mean, the trust comment that Frank opened up with is really important. A lot of times it has to do because there's a bigger priority in the company, and they went and took care of that, and the time was logged in another place, or not even logged, because it was just get it done and everybody was on and working. So I think it's really about, it is a big wide digital universe out there. There's so many. I think there's 2,000 just technical marketing tools just alone there's project management tools. So it's really about finding the right fit for what it is that you want to do within your organization.
Okay, we have another question to any of the panelists. Deploying employees as remote users has increased my endpoint count, and I'm concerned with enterprise security. Should I consider MFA?
Yes. Like yesterday, everybody, it's a requirement, multi-factor authentication. They're going to whine. They're going to hate it. They're going to be like, this is so annoying. No, right, Frank? Like, you have to. It's not an option. We're working remotely, and you gotta.
Highly agreed. When it comes to security, it's not convenience. Sorry, there's a price to pay, and that's going to be part of it, and it's painful. Grab your cell phone, look at it when you get the text.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Frank and Karolyn, can you please shed some light on what is MFA? What is multi-factor authentication?
I'll let Frank go.
Sure.
It's pain.
So you know when you log into something, it'll ask for your username and password. So when I go to a site and ask my username, and it'll ask me either a second question, multiple, usually it's two-factor that we would set up, but you can do beyond two for multi, or it'll say, where would you like to send this, to your email address or to your cell phone, and then it gives you a code, usually a 6 digits, you have to enter it. What it is verifying, you know, if I'm using an app, it's verifying my cell phone, that is me as the user, because I have already entered my cell phone number. So it's a good extra step. Again, if that laptop or someone hits your credentials, but they don't steal your phone, I couldn't do it if I had it sent to my text.
Yeah, and there's different types, like, so depending on the data too, with the multi-factor authentication, it's kind of scary times. You know, there's something called swim swaps that are happening, which is basically hackers can steal your actual phone without having the phone on them. And so that is one of the things that they'll do, is they'll actually take over your SIM card for your phone, and then even with your multi-factor authentication, then they're actually getting access. So in those cases, you know, what we have done, for example, is I have a bunch of stuff on a traditional MFA, but then on my really kind of mission critical parts of my life, I actually do a virtual confirmation to my landline. Because landlines are back, people. I knew they would come back. You know, Frank, we talked about the 90s being awesome, but landlines are not easily hackable. And so if you put your multi-factor authentication into that, then you have a little bit more security.
I'm not going to ask what a landline is, so because I've been around a little bit too.
You know what a landline
but for your SIM swap, there are tools out there. Mobile device management software that we do also provide as a solution. So if they do swap that SIM and you have it pin on it, they can't do what you just described, protecting the company data anyways. I mean, if they want to use the phone, you can't control that. But at least you're safe. So there's another option for mobile.
And Frank, I know your background and everything. So you would talk about, you know, not just multi-factor, but also multi-layer, right? Like being able to. Frank can hook you up with multi-layer, multi-factor authentication. Call him.
That's a great answer.
Thank you, Karolyn, and also Frank. I see that we've actually run over time a little bit. Sue, are there any more questions?
We do have one more question. What's a recommended action to invoke conditional access to enhance our security?
I'm not sure if the question invoke additional action.
Can you ask it again?
I'm not sure from what angle that we're
looking
at.
What's a recommended action to invoke conditional access to enhance our security? Conditional access, my guess would be, Karolyn, like when we use channels, only certain people have access to certain things.
I guess, you know, I'm looking at it here. What's a recommended action to, I guess, like specifically, there's a lot of questions. The reason why Frank and I both look like this is because we're both asking in what capacity are you talking about? Are you talking about control group assets or user level permission access? Are you talking about, you know, when you talk about conditional access, if Anon, if you could give us more information specifically, like what you're actually looking to do. I mean, the thing with privacy and security is it's not just like, we talk about layers, we talk about all these things. So I think we would need to understand specifically what you're trying to talk about in what capacity in order to give an answer. So if there's any clarification on that, then we could answer it. So conditional access, I'm just looking at the chat, Frank. Conditional access from an endpoint. So, you know, a lot of systems, I'm going to try and guess here. Like a lot of systems like have different, you know, like for example, my platform, I create hubs for people who are distributed around the world, which is endpoints. And then, you know, depending on what my clients decide, what the access is for every single one of their users. My clients decide their user permission levels. My clients decide the channel access that they're allowed to see. They decide who can come and go, who can publish, who can't publish, who can view financials and not. I mean, so it's not so much a singular thing, but it's like, I guess we're trying to understand, and we're trying to understand the environment that you're referencing, Anon. So, and I know Frank would tell you the same. Every organization is like its own fingerprint when you're setting up a privacy and security program for them, because everyone's like, my company, for example, is completely in the cloud, which is a completely different way of setting up endpoint access into different things than, say, somebody who actually might have their own physical servers in not just cloud-based servers. They might actually have something sitting in a building here in Windsor. So that's going to be different than what I have. That's a question for you, Frank. I do know, Rakesh, we did have a Q&A going to 3:30 today for anybody who wanted to stay on. So.
Yeah, you're right. So we do have some time. Thank you.
Yeah. So there's another question here for you. Well, Frank, if you want to take it, what is the best way or solution to prevent receiving fake or phishing emails? Sign up for everything with your friend's email address? No, that's bad. That's really bad.
So the biggest thing is education. There's a lot of lunch and learns we do. We do webinars. We send out information, and they're getting more clever every single day. There's some that, you know, they're spoofing your actual email address. Mine is frank@alphakor.com. We hit reply, it actually says frank@alphakor.com. However, when our tech team drills down, they find out it came from, a lot of them are coming from Brazil, Korea, for example, right now. So there's a lot of different countries that are sending these out. So if it doesn't sound right, read it grammatically. Like if I say, hey, Karolyn, I need your help. I need you to run out and get this now. I normally don't talk and act like that. So your guard has to be up. I'm going to go back to that conversation. We do a lot of education. We share. There's also, again, we go back to the firewall. There's a lot of different tools that can be put in place where they already know a lot of these sites and a lot of these domain names that will not reach the end user. So that's part of the battle, and part of the battle is education. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think, and I would just ask, there's a couple of things that I personally do for tips. Like, for example, I have an email that I use, you know, when you're in the store and they're like, can I have your email so I can spam you forever? I have a separate email. I have actually multiple different emails for different things. I have all, Frank would be very proud of me. I have all encrypted passwords, and I don't know any of my own passwords, and I have hundreds of them. And so, because I use a tool called LastPass, and then as far as the, you know, receiving fake or phishing emails, you're gonna get them. So the education piece, if you want to see if you've been compromised, I think it's I'm Pwned. Is it Pwned? I am Pwned. PWNED, I think, is the a website that you can go to see if any of the email addresses that you are using have been compromised. So then you can go change the passwords and then never use those emails again. So
I want to add on that. There's also a dark web out there that we're actually monitoring for clients. So, for example, there's LinkedIn users. Once upon a time, probably 3.5 years ago, there was a partial hack. So when we go to the dark web, a lot of the current LinkedIn users are using the password. So if anyone receives an email and the subject line is an old password, that's where they got it from, the dark web. So again, there's companies out there in the tech world that we can monitor these. The city capital, Capital One breach, we know some of our clientele were on there, so we contacted them. We told them immediately to change their credentials to those sites that they go to. They're very helpful that we were forward thinking. Again, we're monitoring that. There's all kinds of tools. We didn't talk about AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, but there's all kinds of tools that are finding out these things to help our clients stay ahead of it. And again, it's like the athletes, right? What can I get away with today to get an edge over the other athlete without breaking the rules? So the hackers are getting better, and they're breaking a lot of the rules out there, and a lot of these tools are not catching it. So it goes back to us being diligent.
Yeah. So back to what you said when you first came on, change your password.
I didn't want to forget that line.
Do it right now. Do it before you get off this webinar. Everybody, please.
So when I do that at home, the problem is the kids will text me and go, "What's the password to Netflix?"
Nice.
More questions, Sue?
We don't have anything else in the queue. So unless there's other people that still want to tuck things into text there for you, we're at the end of the line.
Okay, and I see that, Sue, you're sharing some good resources there on the chat. So, yeah, and we'll make sure that this information that you're sharing, plus the recording of this webinar, you will be sending it out to all attendees. So feel free to also share it with others that that may be interested in this. So Sue, I think there is no more questions. So I think we will wrap up. I just want to thank again Karolyn and Frank for making time for this. Appreciate this very much. Some very useful information you've shared. And as mentioned, this will be recorded and it will be sent to all the panelists, and it'll be also on our website, on the Chamber's website. And I'm hoping that our partners, WEtech, WETC, will carry it on their websites as well. So it will be available for those of you who either missed it or were able to only partially listen in. The other thing is that we in the Chamber, like many of our partners, we have resources on our website for our members and for the business community in general. So please visit our website. There is a COVID-19 resources for businesses. You will get a lot of information, which is always being updated as things change, which is like every 15 minutes. So that is available for anyone. So please feel free to visit Chamber's website. And also, if you have any questions or suggestions or concerns, again, please send it over to us at info@windsor-essex-chamber.org. We are also moving forward. We'll be offering interactive webinars with local officials, elected and non-elected officials, and we'll be bringing in experts from outside as well, so that you have the opportunity to interact with them, ask questions, be updated on what's happening, and find information that would be relevant to your business, or if you're an employee, it'll be something that you could benefit from as well. So stay tuned. There is an email that actually has gone out today. It's an e-blast. The information is also on our website, at the Chamber's website, and it is the Business Briefs interactive webinars that will be offered actually starting tomorrow. So tomorrow we are bringing in Eric Kusmerichek, our MP, and followed by Mayor Drew Dilkins on Thursday, Warden Gary McNamara on Friday. Monday we are bringing in Rocco Rossi, the President of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. So we're hoping that all of these will be able to share useful information for you, update you in terms of what's happening. You can also ask them questions that is specific to your business, and we're hoping to make this very useful for employees, for businesses, and we'll continue to update that section of our websites as and when we add more speakers and as and when we get more experts to come and join us for those webinars. So with that, I would like to end this session. Again, want to thank Frank and Karolyn, the Economic Development Corporation, WEtech Alliance, Yvonne, and for everyone else. Sue, thank you so much for moderating this, for helping with the setup and everything. and to everyone that has contributed in making this webinar possible. Thanks once again, and we'll hope to see you tomorrow at the 2:30 webinar with Eric Kusmerichik. Have a great day, everyone.